I'm Avon Collis, the CRM and marketing automation specialist at Relevate and all-around good guy. And we are back here again with, Steve Sandor from Inspiring Business. Steve is a consultant and helps structure organizations and give them the ability to scale. Steve works for large companies and small and has done a lot of work with organizations internationally in helping them build their business. This is part 2 of the conversation around building those components to scale your business. And in the last episode, we talked about how to get the owner out of their own way in allowing their team to basically run their business for them by instilling trust and culture and having the right kind of systems in place. And towards the end of the episode, we started to talk about how we were implementing some of those items that are enabling owners to scale and step back. So I guess welcome back, Steve. How are you today?
Yeah, thanks, Avon. Really excited about this because this is where the rubber hits the road.
Excellent. So why don't we roll straight in, and how do we actually go about implementing some of the strategy we talked about in the last episode?
Yeah, again, if we're talking about strategy, there needs to be a plan. There's no point in looking at the instructions 6 months down the track. So we talked about having time to be able to sit back and look at the business and working, it's a hackneyed term, but working on the business, not in it. And so the first thing is to be really clear on what your objectives are. Some people, the objective is growth, others are profit, and hopefully it's both.
Absolutely. I think, was it if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And as much as that seems like the throwaway line, and there's lots of these sort of cliche things, I think it's not until you're really sort of knee deep in it when you go, what are we actually doing? I know of a business around here, turns out several millions of dollars every year, but the org chart may as well be drawn in grey lead pencil. And the plan is changing from day to day. Staff are stressed because they don't know if they still have a job next week. And it's really quite a hectic place to work. That doesn't sound like a comfortable, scalable solution, does it?
No, it doesn't. And again, it's that mentality of do it yourself and thinking that you have all the answers, and not looking for opportunities to grow both personally and the business. And business management has been around since the 70s, probably a little bit earlier with Think and Grow Rich and those books that Dale Carnegie and all those. So if you go back and look at those principles that those icons of the industry wrote about, they're no different to the books that are being written today by the likes of Simon Sinek and Michael, a number of others. That was a seniors moment there. Just trying to think
there are a number of others. Someone comes up to me, "Oh, have you read this book?" I've never heard of them.
No. But the principles are the same. They've just been modernized, so that the modern manager or modern business owner can relate to them because they're more, they might relate more to social media or the communication tools that we have today, but the principles are pretty much the same, so be strategic about what you're doing. The 3 things that you want to achieve over the 12 months and over the next 3 years. The Chinese talk about a 50-year plan. In our world, 10 years is a long time. So be a little bit more strategic in your thinking, and that you can't do that on your own. It's impossible to do that on your own. So again, it's looking for support around that. And that might be a coach, it might be a mentor, it might be a consultant, it might be your staff.
Well, in the last episode, we talked about socializing knowledge, and you sort of said that the owner is so personally connected to it and maybe a little bit lost and maybe a little bit scared of growing themselves, or scared of going broke, or scared of failure. And I think that by being able to share your experiences and being vulnerable, as you mentioned, that you can, one, connect with your staff a little bit more closely, find people that can fill those holes and the knowledge gaps that you don't have, and you know, stick to the thing you're good at. And then I guess the last one being that when you're or getting other people to write the knowledge, having those sounding boards coming back at you, here's what's missing from your how-to guide. So I think as far as implementing those strategies, you know, talking about the threes, you know, one of our strategic priorities is grow the corporate knowledge base.
Yep.
And, you know, every day I'm writing a new how-to guide or tweaking something or something like that. So, you know, I definitely see the value, because now I get less questions with things like ticket templates. And the plan has been, you've got an objective, which might be, you know, grow the corporate knowledge base. We don't know exactly how or what that looks like at this moment, but with that end state in mind, we've been able to shape the way that we're working now to achieve the stepping stones to achieve the end goal. Is that how you would do it?
Yeah, it's a I guess there's a process of understanding the context under which you're operating. So if the business owner's context, their end objective after all of this is to not be a part of the day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
So that's their objective. And so if that's a true objective, then every decision that you make has to have some alignment to that outcome. Now, the problem the business owners have is that they look at the I guess the softer skill side of the business to not having a tangible outcome. And so again, inside that context, every decision that you make has to have an outcome, a business outcome that is profitable and efficient, because otherwise the owner doesn't get the opportunity to sit above all of it. They're in it. And so, you know, there's that push pull of ideas, growth, strategy, improvement, and the pull back to, you know, get back in your box, because systems, processes, control stop the organization from growing, but but they make it more efficient. So there's that balance between, you know, how far do we push it without blowing the business up? You know, so a lot of businesses, their sales is their key metric, but if you have more sales than you can handle at the back end, what you end up with is disaffected customers. And that, you know, we know how hard it is to get one good customer, and we want them a raving fan. We don't want them out in the marketplace telling, you know, the market how bad we are, because our objective has been on the growth side of it. So, you know, there's some tools that you need to get in place as you grow, but there is that push pull between being creative, and pushing forward, but having a tangible outcome.
It's interesting you say that. So I would say you definitely have to have somewhat of a flexible plan. Like, your goals need to be specific enough to allow some variation, because, you know, I often liken this sort of creative tension in business to walking a very large dog. It's pulling you faster than you want to go. You're pulling back on it. It's going off track a little bit on the sides of the path, and you got to pull it back onto the path. But together, you're better for it, because one wants to go too slow, the other one wants to go too fast, but together you can kind of get there with a bit of, you know, padding and guidance along the way.
Yeah, and it needs that tension. You know, because if it's only got one direction, if it was only the dog running around, well, you know, you wouldn't go, you might even go around in circles. You know, who knows? And if the rein is stuck and you don't move, well, then the dog gets frustrated with that, and, you know, turns around and bites you, because it wants to get going. So that is a natural tension.
Yeah.
And it's the leader who then has control, and the strategy gives them the comfort that they know that the direction that they're going in is in the right direction. And there will be the ups, and the dog will take you off track for a little bit and you need to bring it back on. You might be the one that actually takes the dog off track, so
Yeah.
because you want to go down a particular path, and it may not necessarily be the right path to take. But we all know that if we have that end goal in mind, it's not linear. Business is never linear. There's always it's a trend line, and what you want to make sure is that trend line is heading in the right direction.
So that kind of speaks to having the right kind of people around you as well. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's really, I guess that's the key to it. Having people who have got the experience and knowledge in your particular area, that what you're looking for, and they typically come to you from people who and they trust, or you build up connections through networks of people that like, and trust. And so not everyone has the right answer. So I've got a number of answers for an organization. You offer certain solutions and answers to an organization. The financial people will have a particular view of the world, the marketing consultant, the sales consultant, the operations people. And so the wise owner will corral those people, curate them, and then corral those people around to get a board of advice, around you. So I've got a number of people around me who I take advice from, you being one of them. And I've got a marketing team, and I've got another team that helps me with the product development. And so I'm taking my own advice, and you can't do things on your own. Otherwise it's, the tail wagging the dog. So yeah, it's really critical that you have those people in place. Some of them will be longer term relationships because they're a part of your day-to-day operations. Some of them might be consultants that come in and do project work. But at the end of the day, what you're trying to get to is I talked about it in our previous episode, we're trading time for money. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the maximum value of your time, and you're trading that with staff, consultants, coaches, who can deliver the outcome at a cheaper price than if you were to do it. So that's that strategy. But yeah, having people around you, really good people around you, is really important.
And I think another wise Steve once said, we don't hire good people and tell them what to do. We hire them so they can tell us what to do.
Yeah. And Apple is one of the, one of the greatest companies,
one of the largest companies.
ever. Yeah.
I think its growth has slowed since Steve passed, but it's been absolutely phenomenal and transformed the way that they've that I guess the tech industry has operated.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into part of the implementation strategy. So having the right people, they talk about having the right people on the bus. Right? So is the bus heading in the right direction? Have you got the right people? Sometimes you've got the right people, but they're in the wrong job. So you've hired them for the attitude, thinking that they can do a particular job, and then you've put them into that job and they fail at that job. Now, who was to blame for that, right? So was it? And I always, I'm pointing one finger at you, and I've got three fingers pointing back to me. So I always look as an employer or a business owner, is that I'm accountable for every mistake that's in the organization. So if we've hired somebody for the right reason, maybe we put them into the wrong job. Now, you can't automatically move that person out of that job and into something completely different. But what you can do is you can identify that that's an issue, because you don't want to lose that person either. The cost of hiring somebody is anywhere between 30% of their annual, what they call fixed annual reward. It's their total package, to 250%.
Yes.
That's what it costs the organization when you lose an employee. And that's often misunderstood.
Well, experience and like nuances and relationships with
Yep.
customers and all those sorts of things.
And getting somebody in,
Mm.
you then have to make that investment again of your time. So then now the someone has to train them, and even though you might have all the training modules and in place, you still have to, you know, onboard them properly and get them bedded down, and they're not functioning fully for, you know, 4 weeks, you know. So all that comes into situation. So really having the right you know, and everybody rolls their eyes when I say this, is like having a good job description. But a job description is not a piece of paper that tells the person what the job is. The job description is a tool for both the manager and the employee to be really clear on what the outcomes need to be, you know, the recruitment process, what attitudes we're looking for, etc. So that's the first piece, you know, getting the right people onto the bus and then getting them into the right seat. And they might be sitting in the wrong seat, and so you don't want to lose them. So how do you shift the business? How do you shift their role from one to another? And then that's you know, your organizational structure. And that takes a little bit of technical expertise to be able to, you know, drive that through.
I wouldn't say you can do this all the time, but during Corona, I was fortunate enough to pick up someone who was made redundant because of it. And she had, I had the inside scoop that she was really, really good. And so she came over and I said to her, first thing I said was, what do you actually want to do? What do you enjoy doing? What is the top 3 things, irrespective of job title, that you could do? So she talked about something which was, you know, a kind of like a corporate social, like a charitable based thing. Then there was something else that was about sort of like copywriting, and then and like creative writing and that sort of stuff. And then there was something else like talking to people. So I said, great, I've got just the job for you. It's those 3 things stitched into one, and that's the job you're going to do. So instead of hiring someone who was there to fill a spot, you know, here's some tasks, and you know, not everyone can do this, so this is a little bit out of the box, but I found someone with a great attitude and a lot of skills, and found exactly what they wanted to do, and then put them there. Now,
yeah, there's a technique in recruiting called behavioral-based interviewing, and it's a questioning to actually find the type of, it's not personality, it's actually the type of person that they are. Yeah, it's a really powerful tool.
There's a few frameworks for that. One of my least favorite and not really recognized is DISC. Because it's not it's a commercial framework. It's not validated by any research. Then there's was it ISTJ, Kiersey, or Myers-Briggs, and all these sorts of things. And I think that you know, people are still people. You can use those as a bit of a guide, but that's not a scorecard. You really got to sit them down and talk to them and understand who they are, and how do you actually interact with them. Like, are they someone you get along with? Are they someone you would trust? If you put your wallet down, walk out the room, and come back, you feel like the money's still going to be there, or
Exactly. Yeah. Look, interviewing and recruiting is a real art, and it takes time. And all too often, we jump straight into looking at the resume and discounting people because they don't meet all of the skills. And as I said, you know, there's a particular technique in really getting clear on a person's behavior. So one technique is, you know, asking the question, what's a typical day for you? So that seems like a really innocuous, you know, what's that question all about? Well, if that person answers, well, I woke up at 6 o'clock, I had, you know, I had a shower, got ready, had breakfast, got dressed for work, jumped in my car, drove down the freeway, got to work, you know, or alternatively, today, you mean today or next week or whatever. So the answer that they give is, one is very logical, sequential, and sort of systems process, and the other one is what would seem to be erratic or scattered, but it's creative, but it's actually creative.
Yeah.
And so if you're employing a management accountant, you don't want someone, you don't want an accountant who's very logical and
Creative.
sequential, right? Because they're a financial accountant.
Yeah.
And a management accountant is someone who's looking into the future, and you want them to creative, and vice versa. You don't want someone who's creative doing financial, rear view mirror work, because then they get creative with the accounting, and that's not always a good thing either.
No. Well, back sort of on my my lucky hire, I guess, she works completely flexibly. So, she's got kids and school pickups and one of the things that she absolutely loved is, she can clock on whenever she likes, as long as the deliverables are done. So, she'll go, I'm not feeling it today. I'll go drive for a coffee, come back, have a sit down and play with the phone for a bit and then get back into it. So, but the work she delivers is amazing. So it's interesting.
Yeah, there was an interesting scenario unfold when COVID first started, because a lot of people went home and were working from home, and the managers who were monitoring those people felt as though they were losing control of the accountability of the people. But and there's been a number of studies to this effect, is that the people, because they were allowed to do the work in a time frame that was comfortable for them, they felt accountable for their own output. And so the managers didn't need to be monitoring it. And the managers who did continue to put some, screenshots or, monitoring the amount of time that they were on their computer, etc., the productivity actually went down. And the ones who just allowed them the freedom and trust, we come back to this trust conversation, allowed them to do the work and just made sure that they hit their milestones. And if they didn't, then the manager would say, how can I help you? What do you need? Is it systems? Is it time? What's happening? Can we put a framework around your time management, maybe? And then that, that effectiveness. So that system is no different whether you're running a remote business or whether you're running a physical business where people are sitting in the office, hovering around their workstation or their desk, wondering whether they're going to do the work. It serves no one any purpose.
And there's other ways to do it as well. Like when we talked about having those systems in play, say for example with CRM, I can see the login rates and times of people, and then you can see activities closed off and records that have been played with, adjusted and completed. If they're filling out forms, almost everything online, if the system is set up for it, is traceable. So you don't need to be seeing how many clicks or how many mouse movements or whatever. Like you can run reports to see their, whether they've logged in, whether they've been active, and kick the right goals. Like, you don't want people to log 1,000 leads that are just junk. You want good quality stuff. So you don't look at a report of how many leads were created at the end of the month. You run a report on and performance track how many opportunities were closed, or how many leads were converted, or how many leads had X amount of detail on them. So there's other metrics. And as far as, sorry, my last point, from a time and space perspective, Google had that same thing for years, where they had these kooky office spaces because people just never left. They kind of lived there. And if they want to go in a sleep pod for half an hour, fine. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because they're a bit sleepy after lunch, because they know they're going to be more effective and they're going to stay till 10, 11, 12, 1 a.m. or whatever. So
and the point that you raise is management information system, MIS. As an owner of the business, you can get into the weeds and you can have a look at how many clicks and screenshot, all that sort of stuff. That serves, that's not efficient. Having that, having a system in place, a CRM with, all of that ability to create and generate reports, you can then start to see what again, going back to your strategy and then the implementation plans on each of those. So you might have a financial strategy, a sales strategy, a marketing strategy, product development. All of those are you can either do it in a waterfall project, or you can do it in a a sprint type, agile type strategy. It's depending on the situation. But having that as the leader, so that you've got a helicopter view of the direction of the business, and then as you see the trends start to change, so you see people's performance dropping, then you can raise that. You can have that conversation about what is it that then you go into the detail. Then you start to look at, maybe this person's, they're struggling with the sales technique, or they're struggling with time, or whatever it is, and then you can put in place strategies to help them, plus Pareto's theory.
Yeah.
All right, 20% of them are generating 80% of the revenue.
Yeah.
So let's see what those people are doing really well, and let's get the others on board.
I think the distinction, like say for me in the CRM and marketing automation sort of industry, I do want the detail, because for me, I it's not necessarily from a micromanaging perspective, but and in most organizations that helicopter view would work. But for me, it would be more about seeing how people are interacting with the platform and doing the work, so then I could go, let's remove that step and automate it, or let's collect more data at the start to reduce the amount of effort and work. Asking one more question at the start could save 5 hours at the back end.
Absolutely. Yep.
So that's my ethos, but very, very, very much true. So talking about all these sort of things, obviously it's going to take a lot of time to build these sort of things. What are some considerations around time frame?
Yeah. So, well, obviously it depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to become the next Google, not sure.
I want to do it yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, come up with the next great idea. But for, I think businesses put far too much pressure on themselves. I was listening to a podcast this morning, actually, about the the expectation that we have when we look at the people on social media and TV, and we're trying to aspire to this this millionaire lifestyle, when in fact really what we're trying to do is we're trying to achieve the lifestyle that is comfortable for us. And if that's you want to be a millionaire, then great. So that then puts some context around where it is that you want to, the time frame that you want to do this. But typically, anything less than 12 months to really drive change in an organization, it's an it's an unrealistic expectation to try and make a significant change where you are shifting your total influence over the business and extracting yourself partially out of the business. And a lot of entrepreneurs are very impatient. They want it done yesterday. Where is the outcome? And so that's where I temper their my experience has been around going into businesses either as a senior manager, general manager, consultant, and really tempering the enthusiasm of the business owner, but encouraging them to head in the right direction. So I sort of become the arbitrator between the two. And that's, some people are happy with that because that's the mindset that they're in, and others not so much.
Yeah, I think sometimes you got to let the horse have its head, and then give them a chance to, maybe that's not the way you would have done it. Don't jump in straight away, otherwise they'll never be motivated to have a go again.
Yeah.
And one of the things we talked about earlier was like continually engaging with your employees and customers around that. And it might be like, people need time to change, as you said. And someone said to me that, if someone's looking in one direction, don't show them too quickly in the other direction, otherwise they're going to snap their neck.
Yep.
Do it slowly and in stages, and then they will get to the point of where they need to be.
Yep. Absolutely. I guess sort of getting back to some of the implementation framework, one of the first things that I believe is really important for an organization, or for the owner to have a really clear view on the detail is around their financials.
Yeah.
And so having a real clear understanding of cash flow, what your expenses are, whether they're, whether you're spending money efficiently in the right areas. Again, that gives you some confidence, so that if you map that out, then you know what your budget is, and so the budget dictates the time frame that you have. So if you've got an unlimited supply of cash to invest in the business, then you can get this thing done reasonably quickly. If you're using the business profitability and an increase in profit to fund the growth, then that takes a little bit more time to actually get through that process. So, but unless you've got your financials in place and really clear, then and that again, that's not necessarily getting your accounting done or your books done. It's having that financial management, looking forward and factoring in all of the growth strategies that you have and the what if scenarios. So if we were to increase our sales, what would be our cost of goods and what would be the effect on the operations, and so therefore the profit. So running out those, now I don't do that, but I've got a number of people that I work with who that's their speciality. And so, that would be the first thing, that would be the first step to make sure that, because we can blow a business up, really is. And I have seen it done, people get in there and they just focus on one particular area and it blows the business up, and it's a tragedy.
To someone with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So yeah, I think there's value in having an external perspective on things, and a lot of times people don't think about the strategic advantage. They're like they want to copy some of the business, but sometimes copying is not always the best idea, or you might bring in some new thinking. Sometimes new blood works in terms of your employees to bring in new processes and systems. One of the most annoying statements of any organization is, "That's the way we've always done it around here." So change is the only certainty.
And that's a really interesting point, because the people who are invested in "we've always done it around here" will be, if you're not careful, the saboteurs to the impact of change. So sometimes what they've created was the best, absolutely the best solution at that time.
Yeah.
And so including them in that whole process is really important. That, acknowledging the fact that what they've done has got the organization to the point that they're at the moment. And so, yeah, great. Now, how can we improve this? Because that was 10 years ago, and the situations are different. So what would you do to improve that? And again, we come back to, giving them the accountability of that improvement, but the ability to feel as though they can come up with solutions, and those solutions may not be the final outcome, but they might also be the catalyst for a discussion for the group, right? And then someone comes up with an idea and you go, no, we tried that, but what about this? And then it engages everybody. Because if you just come in and say, what you've been doing, is rubbish, and we're going to be doing this, well, then you've just created a whole bunch of,
or maybe a better way to frame it might be, what you've been doing solved these challenges. Here are new challenges we need to solve. How can we refocus and reshift?
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. So that's been a fantastic episode with you here today. Is there any closing idea, comment, or thought you wanted to leave our listeners with?
Overarching, we all know that business is difficult, and I think if you're in business and you've been in business for a while, you know how difficult it is. And so just be patient, be strategic and be patient, and get really good people around you. Curate them and collect them, and listen to them. That would be my biggest takeout. Listen to the people around you, and in the intention in which they're giving you that advice.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Steve Sandor, for another fantastic episode. Again, this was part 2 of a 2-part episode series, I guess, on how to put frameworks into your business to allow you to scale. Please make sure you look up Stephen Sandor on LinkedIn and check out his website at inspiringbusiness.net. We'll make sure to put the links to Steve and his LinkedIn in the online posts and socials of this podcast. Thank you very much. You can learn more about implementing scalable systems in your business with our book, The Business Octopus, where you can learn how to give your business a brain and teach it to grow itself. You can get your copy from relevate.com.au/octopus. You can also find answers and ask questions in our online community at support.relevate.com.au.